Alright, Eternals has been out for a few days, so now I think it's time to talk about some spoilers. That's right, welcome to my Eternals spoiler talk. That is a spoiler warning. If you have not seen Eternals yet, probably should steer clear of this video unless you don't care. That is your short warning. Alright, so I'm just gonna dive right in. I do find it kind of funny that when we first get to the present day in this movie, Ajax is already dead. Yeah, after the Deviant attack in London, Sersi, Ikaris, and Sprite, they go to Ajax's house in South Dakota, and they just find her dead body laying there, and they're like, oh, shit. And throughout this entire present day story, we don't really have Salma Hayek. We have her in flashbacks because she's dead in the present day. I just find that really funny because, you know, she was marketed as part of the team in this movie and oh, she's dead. You find out that that sphere thing that she had is what allowed her to communicate with the celestial Arishem. And so when they find her dead body, Ajax sphere lifts out of her body and goes into Sersi. So now Sersi is the one that gets to communicate with the celestial, which is gonna be important. But I do want to talk about some other Eternal characters that I didn't mention in my spoiler-free review. Like Makkari, I really like Makkari. She's, you know, the deaf one with super speed, and she's really sweet, she's nice. Plus, when she runs, it looks really cool. Like when Phastos is like, go find where the emergence is gonna be. And she's just hauling ass, you see her running, it looks awesome. And also Druig. Druig is actually one of the most interesting characters in the film, if you ask me. Because before this movie came out, I heard that this character was like the aloof one of the group. He has the power of mind control, and you know, he decides to distance himself from the other Eternals. So my thought process was, oh, he's gonna become like the villain of the movie, because that's normally what happens in stories like this. But no, it turns out another Eternal becomes the villain. I'll get to him later. But Druig, no, he's still like part of the team. He's just kind of distant from the others. I like that. He's still a good guy, but he's just kind of a dick. That makes him really interesting to me. And I also really like the relationship that he has with Makkari, because I feel like Makkari is the one that breaks through into Druig, you know? She breaks down his walls. Druig calls her beautiful, which she is. I love how tight they are, and I feel like they might develop a romance in the next movie or something. I honestly would not be opposed to that. Although, speaking of romance, alright, can we talk about the scene where Ikaris comes onto Sersi? Because, I don't know, there's something about that scene that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Like when Ikaris is like, I think you're really beautiful, Sersi. And she turns around and then he just kind of goes up behind her and starts breathing in her neck. I was like, you're being kind of creepy right now, dude. Like, I didn't see her give consent or anything. You're pretty lucky that she feels the same way about you, dude. Otherwise, you probably would have been in for an eternal silent treatment. And then there's a sex scene. Which I don't know why people are going apeshit about this sex scene. I mean, it's not like you see anything. It's not like it's Game of Thrones. Although there are so many connections this movie has to Game of Thrones. And I think it's just people being weird. One other thing that kind of blew my mind about this movie, it's not something that rubbed me the wrong way. It's just kind of, it made my mind explode, is the fact that there are DC references in this movie. Yeah, there are actually a couple of them. Like when they go to Australia to meet up with Gilgamesh and Thena, and Kingo's valet introduces himself, and Gilgamesh is like, oh, you're his valet, like Alfred from Batman. I was like, what? First DC reference in a Marvel Cinematic Universe movie, hello. And then, of course, later on, when they go to visit Phastos' family, his kid is like, oh, look, it's Superman! He was flying around with a cape and shooting laser beams out of his eyes. And Phastos is like, oh, are you going by Clark now? I was like, what? Okay, this is telling me that DC Comics exists in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That's what this is telling me. It's telling me that if you go to a comic book store in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you can find a Wonder Woman comic. And that just logistically blows my mind. I'll tell you what, that's what could really bring Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness over the top, is if they have the DC Universe in there. If nothing else, just for like a little cameo or something. It's not gonna happen, but I'm just thinking out loud. But getting to the serious shit, about an hour into the movie, we find out the true purpose of the Eternals being on Earth. Cause Arishem the Judge breaks it down for Sersi. The Eternals are there to bring forth the emergence of a new Celestial. Because Arishem explains that every billion years, new Celestials are born. And they are born from seeds that are placed inside planets. And these seeds are powered by intelligent life, the population of intelligent life on that planet. So in Earth's case, that should be dolphins, but instead it's human beings. Come on, everyone knows that dolphins are more intelligent than humans. And as for the Deviants were originally created by the Celestials to do what the Eternals are supposed to do, make sure there's enough intelligent life on the planet for the new Celestial to emerge. But there was a flaw in the Deviants' design, and they evolved to now they destroy and eat intelligent life. And that is why the Eternals were created, to destroy the Deviants. No Deviants means more intelligent life, and therefore more power for the new Celestial to emerge. Which is a really interesting concept morally. Because if you look at it from a certain angle, the Deviants were in the right. Because we don't want this new Celestial to emerge, that means the end of the world. So the Deviants feasting on humans prevented this. It's like, it's a good and bad thing at the same time. Same thing with Thanos if you really think about it. He snapped away half the population, therefore delaying the emergence. Again, it's a good and bad thing at the same time. I don't know, I find that really interesting. But really what we learn from all this exposition is that the Celestials, yeah, they're dicks. They create galaxies and planets filled with life so they can birth each other, I think. I think that's how it works. This really is like the God scale part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Because we learned that it's because of the Celestials that galaxies and life even exists. But if life exists simply for them, then that is kind of a fucked up system, at least if you ask me. I don't know what we're gonna do about this in the long run. I mean, I imagine that'll be quite a few movies down the road, but that will have to be touched on eventually. And I'll be honest, I do find that pretty exciting. So later on in the movie, when we're in the Amazon, we get to this deviant fight, and Gilgamesh dies, and this actually made me pretty sad. Because kind of like Makkari and Druig, Gilgamesh and Thena had a pretty tight relationship. Because of Thena's mad worry, holy shit, I forgot to touch on that. Thena was coming down with this, like, sickness of sorts. They say her mind is fracturing under the weight of too many memories, which, yeah, that totally makes sense. If you're on Earth for thousands of years, that's a lot of memories to carry. I feel like that would eventually break your mind, and Thena, I guess, was the first to fall. So Gilgamesh was like, alright, I'll take care of her. Which is what made it really sad when Gilgamesh died. Because Thena breaks down, she starts crying, and this is the emotional scene I was talking about. Because what can I say? It got to me. You really do feel that Gilgamesh cared so much for Thena, and so when she broke down and cried, I'm not gonna lie, I almost teared up. It was sad. But the deviants absorb Gilgamesh's powers. This one deviant, he absorbs his powers and becomes like a more humanoid version of a deviant, including he now has a voice. And he's voiced by Bill Skarsgård of all people. Yeah, that's Pennywise. And you could totally tell when he's delivering his lines, he's like, you can't save any of them. I was like, you said that in It Chapter 2. It's like almost the same exact line. It was funny. Then we get to the part with Phastos' family. And alright, I do want to give this movie all sorts of props for the representation. Phastos has a husband and a son. You even see him and his husband kissing in one scene. I was like, good for you, movie. I can't believe that's the reason this movie was actually banned in a couple of other countries. I just find that ridiculous. But Phastos comes up with this idea of the Unimind, this thing that can give the Eternals more power, more cosmic power. And yeah, that is a thing from the comics, so my research told me. And the big shock when the Eternals find out what their true purpose is to bring forth this birth of Tiamat, this new Celestial, it's Ikaris. Ikaris is the one who turns on the team. Because he's like, nope, I live to serve Arishem. Let's bring forth this new Celestial. Whereas most of the other Eternals are like, nah, let's save the human race. You find out that just a few days before this main story started, Ikaris was talking with Ajak about this very thing. And Ajak was like, we need to stop the emergence because she fell in love with the people of Earth. And so Ikaris flew her to Alaska and got her killed by the deviants. Ikaris is responsible for Ajak's death. He brings her body back to her house in South Dakota to make it look like it wasn't him who got her killed. Smart thinking. So yeah, it turns out Ikaris is a dick. And he leaves and Sprite is like, I'm going with you. So she doesn't. Okay. Might as well talk about Sprite here and why she's one of the most memorable characters in the entire movie. Because when she's breaking it down for Cersei, actually when Kingo figured out that she was in love with Ikaris, making the whole Peter Pan analogy, I was like, shit, yeah, that must really suck for her. And so yeah, when she's talking to Cersei, she's like, I never got to have a life and grow up. I've been stuck in this form of a kid for thousands of years. You can't imagine how much that fucking sucks. And I was watching the scene like, shit, yeah, that really does suck. I'm not gonna lie, that really got to me. For some reason, I actually don't know why it hit me so hard, but it did. Like, honestly, this was probably the most impactful scene in the movie for me. I don't know, I couldn't help but feel bad for her. She's in love with Ikaris, which makes sense because she's just as mature as the rest of the Eternals. She just doesn't look it. That's not her fault. She even asked Kingo, she was like, why was I made this way? Kingo's like, I don't know. It really did seem unfair. Fucking Arishem, what a dick. And so now, yeah, this is the part where the emergence is happening. It's the final climax of the movie. And it looks awesome. This giant celestial head and hand are just emerging from the ocean. And yeah, you can see this celestial is just enormous. And so you're like, oh shit, it's happening. All right, Earth is about to explode like Krypton. Let's put a stop to this. We have the Makkari versus Ikaris fight, which is the action scene I was talking about where two people are fighting each other that looked awesome. Because this straight up was Superman versus the Flash. It was so cool. Makkari's running super fast and they're fighting and it's... oh my god. She's pinning him to the wall, just boosh, boosh. It was shot really well, it was choreographed really well, it was great. Thena kills the Bill Skarsgård deviant by slicing him up. That was actually really cool. She goes, pshing, and you just see the top of his head sliding off like Kingsman style, and then he just falls to pieces on the ground. I was like, whoo! That was cool. And so this whole conflict ends when Cersei is there on the Celestial, and her power is that she can turn material into other material. So she's on this golden Celestial, and she turns it to marble. She goes, gah! And you see the marble spreading out over the Celestial, Tiamat. Although, if she wanted to be smart, if I were her, I would have vaporized him. I would have turned him into air, because she said she could do that earlier in the film. Remember when Kingo was filming his documentary, Cersei was like, oh yeah, I've turned a rock into metal, I've turned a rock into glass. Oh, and there was one time I turned a rock into air. Yeah, she said she could do that, so if I were her, I would just vaporize this giant celestial. I would just turn him into air, and so therefore you wouldn't have this giant marble head and hands sticking out of the ocean. I mean, again, it looks awesome visually, but I imagine that'll make for a few problems. I don't know what problems, but I imagine this is gonna be a thing now. For the rest of the MCU's history, there will be this giant marble celestial sticking out of some random part of the ocean. That's funny. But yeah, we have stopped the emergence, so victory! Icarus has a weird self-crisis and flies into the sun. Actually, I imagine he did that because he didn't want to face Arishem. He didn't want to be like, sorry master, I failed. So he just kills himself. He flies into the sun like his mythological counterpart. Although we don't see him die, so I'm not sure if he's actually dead. I mean, if he can survive in space, God knows what else he can survive. So I'm just saying, we'll put a question mark by his death for now. For now. And Cersei grants Sprite a mortal life. I love that. Sprite gets her wish. She gets to live out a normal life. She gets to go to school and grow up and have a job and a love life. Good for her. But also, I imagine this leaves it open for Leah McHugh to return in future movies if she wants to. Because as this actress grows in real life, now it will make sense when she looks older in the next movie. So smart thinking on Chloe Zhao's part. And so the movie ends with Thena, Makari, and Druig leaving on the ship, the Domo Arigato, Mr. Roboto. They're gonna go out and find more Eternals on other planets to tell them the truth. Meanwhile, Cersei, Kingo, and Phastos stay on Earth. And it's funny, the last scene where Cersei's talking with Dane Whitman, Kit Harington, he's like, oh yeah, my family history is a bit complicated. And he's about to go on about, you know, the whole Black Knight thing, which I'll get to when I talk about the post-credits scene, when all of a sudden the clouds part in the sky and it's like this divine intervention. Arishem appears out of nowhere, and he takes Cersei and Kingo and Phastos, and he's like,
you have defied my will. I will spare the human race for now, but I will return for judgment.
And he takes them and he disappears in a black hole, and so you're like, holy shit, talk about a cliffhanger ending right there. Where did he take them? I'm actually really curious. Probably back to the World Forge. But that's where the movie ends, that's where it cuts to credits, and I was like, oh shit, alright. That was a lot of movie. But of course it's not over yet. Yeah, let's talk about the mid-credits scene because okay. This is probably one of my least favorite mid-credits scenes in an MCU movie in a while. Cause we're on the ship with Thena, Makari, and Druig, and all of a sudden these lights start flickering in the hallway and out comes Pip the Troll, voiced by Patton Oswalt, and I was like, what the fuck is that? Kinda like the mid-credits scene in Shazam where you see Mr. Mind and I was like, what the fuck is that? But Pip the Troll's like, da 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 da, here comes Star Fox! And I was like, Star Fox? That's a weird name for a Marvel character. But he comes out and it's Harry Styles, and I was like, what in God's green earth? You mean to tell me Kevin Feige actually approved of this? Look, I don't know how good Harry Styles is as an actor. He wasn't in enough of Dunkirk for me to make a good assessment or even really remember him. But yeah, apparently this is Eros, brother of Thanos. And again, I'm like, wait a minute. Okay, wait, Thanos had a brother and he was an Eternal? This better not be retconning Thanos because I swear to God, Thanos never mentioned having a brother. So this is gonna need some explaining, which I'm not gonna lie. If my brother was Harry Styles and I looked like a giant purple grape with a nutsack for a chin, I'd want to wipe out half the universe too. Just saying. But Eros and Pip are like, we're here to help, because I also have a sphere that lets me communicate with the Celestials. So you're like, alright, they're gonna help. Okay, cool. I'm guessing that'll lead to the next Eternals movie. The post-credit scene is a lot cooler than this mid-credit scene. It's Dane Whitman back on Earth, and he opens up this chest thing, which inside you already know what it is if you know your lore. Yeah, that's the Ebony Blade, motherfuckers. It's a pretty badass weapon. It's pretty much the Anduril of the Marvel Universe. It's awesome, and I can't wait to see it in action. And then you hear this voice. You don't see who it is, and he's like, are you sure you're ready for that, Mr. Whitman? Folks, that is the voice of Eric Brooks, Blade, being played by Mahershala Ali. Chloe Zhao actually came out and confirmed that. So that's pretty cool if you ask me. As of right now, we actually still don't have a release date for the MCU's Blade movie. But this is set up for it. So now I'm wondering, how is Blade gonna tie in with Eternals and the Black Knight, Dane Whitman? I am certainly intrigued. I guess we'll find out. So in conclusion, Eternals, I don't want to say it's a mixed bag, because I did think the movie was pretty cool, but I mean, if you just look at the Rotten Tomatoes rating, it is kind of a divisive movie. Some people like it, others not so much. I don't think I've heard of anyone who really loves it. My big concern is that this movie is really self-contained. There are really no tie-ins to the larger MCU in this movie. I mean, the Avengers were mentioned a couple of times, but other than that, nothing. Like, you would think Doctor Strange would get some word about a celestial emerging from the ocean. Where was he when that was happening? I don't know. Here's hoping the sequel actually has some real tie-ins to the larger MCU. We'll see what happens though. So Eternals, who was your favorite Eternal on the team? And also, what did you think of those credit scenes? Where do you think they might go? Whatever you think, go ahead and leave a comment. And of course, thank you for subscribing. Now if you'll excuse me, The Voice is on tonight. We're in the live playoffs. It's exciting. Peace!